Close your eyes now and let yourself drift back through time. We are going somewhere quiet tonight, somewhere far from the noise of your day. We are traveling to a place where fields stretch wide and forests grow thick, where the air moves slowly through tall trees, where stories live in the soil itself. You are safe here with me. You can rest as we wander together through this old tale. There is nothing to fear in these words, only mystery, only the gentle pull of a story that has been told for many lifetimes. Tonight we visit a family who lived long ago in a place called Tennessee. The year does not matter much. The exact date fades like morning fog. What matters is the story. What matters is how the strangeness arrived, how it stayed, how it became legend. Let your breathing slow. Let your body sink deeper into comfort. We have all the time we need. The story will unfold like a flower opening at dawn, petal by petal, breath by breath. The family lived on a farm. You can picture this farm if you close your eyes. Rolling land, a wooden house with a porch, fields of corn and tobacco, a barn where animals slept, fences made of split rails, dirt roads that wound between properties. This was a time before electric lights, before the hum of machinery. At night, the darkness was complete. The stars were bright. The sounds of the forest carried for miles. The father was a farmer. He worked the land with his hands. He rose before dawn and returned after sunset. His face was weathered by sun and wind. His hands were calloused and strong. He believed in hard work and faith. He believed in providing for his family. The mother kept the home. She cooked meals over a wood fire. She sewed clothes by candlelight. She preserved food for winter. She raised the children with patience and care. She sang hymns while she worked. Her voice was soft and steady. There were children in this house, sons and daughters of different ages. They helped with chores. They learned to read from the family Bible. They played in the fields after their work was done. They listened to stories on the porch when evening came. This was an ordinary family. They were not wealthy. They were not famous. They lived simple lives in a simple place. But something found them. Something chose them. Something that would make their name remembered long after they were gone. Let yourself relax more deeply now. Your muscles are loose. Your mind is calm. The story continues like a river flowing. You can float along with it. You can let it carry you toward sleep. The strangeness began small, so small that at first no one paid much attention. A sound in the night, a scratching at the outer walls of the house, like branches scraping against wood, like small animals moving in the dark. The father went outside with a lantern. He walked around the house. He saw nothing unusual. The fields were quiet. The barn was still. The animals were calm. He returned to bed thinking it was just the wind, just the settling of the house, just the normal sounds of a farm at night. But the sound came again the next night, and the night after that. Always after the family had gone to bed. Always when the house was dark and quiet. Scratch, scratch, scratch against the walls. Sometimes at the front of the house, sometimes at the back. Sometimes near the windows. The father checked again and again. He walked the perimeter with his lantern held high. He looked for signs of animals. He looked for loose boards or broken shutters. He found nothing. Nothing that could explain the persistent scratching. The mother began to worry. Not with fear, not yet. Just with the natural concern of someone who cannot explain what is happening. She wondered if there were mice in the walls, if there were raccoons on the roof, if the house needed repairs they had not noticed. The children heard the sounds too. They whispered about it in their shared rooms. They pulled their blankets tighter. They wondered what made the noises, but they trusted their parents. They believed their father when he said everything was fine. Days passed. Weeks passed. The scratching continued. It became part of the rhythm of the house, part of the nightly routine. The family would lie in their beds and listen, They would wait for it to start, and it always did, always in the darkness, always unexplained. Your breathing is so slow now, so peaceful. Your body feels heavy and warm. You're drifting along with this story. You are sinking deeper into rest. There's no urgency here, only the slow unfolding of events. Then the sounds changed. They grew louder. The scratching became knocking, hard, deliberate knocking on the walls, on the doors, on the wooden floors. Knock, 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 over and over, moving from room to room. The father sat up in bed. He lit a candle. He walked through the house, following the sound. But whenever he entered a room where the knocking had been, it would stop. It would start in another room. Behind him. Away from him, as if it knew he was coming, as if it was playing with him. The mother joined him. They walked together through the dark house. They checked every corner, every closet, every space under the beds. They found nothing, no person, no animal, no explanation. The children were frightened now. The oldest daughter began having trouble sleeping. She would lie awake listening to the knocking, wondering what it wanted, wondering why it had come to their house. The knocking came every night for months. It became louder, more insistent. Sometimes it sounded like fists pounding on doors, sometimes like rocks being thrown against the walls. But when anyone looked outside, there was nothing there. No marks on the walls, no stones on the ground, nothing. The family stopped talking about it with others at first. They worried people would think they were imagining things, that they were making up stories, that there was something wrong with them. So they suffered in silence. They endured the nightly disturbances. They tried to live their normal lives. But the strangeness did not stop. It grew. Let your eyes remain closed. Let your jaw relax. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. You are held safely by whatever supports you now. The story continues. The mystery deepens. But you are only an observer. You are only listening. You are safe and calm. One night the sounds changed again. The knocking stopped. In its place came a new sound, a pulling sound. The family heard their blankets being tugged, gently at first, then harder, as if invisible hands were trying to pull the covers away. The youngest child cried out. The mother rushed to comfort her. The father stood in the doorway with his candle. He watched as the blanket moved on its own, as it slid slowly toward the foot of the bed. No one was touching it. Nothing visible was there. But it moved. The father spoke into the empty room. He asked who was there. He demanded that they show themselves. His voice was firm, but there was uncertainty in it now. There was something he could not explain, something he could not fight because he could not see it. The blanket stopped moving. The room became still. The child stopped crying. The mother held her close and sang softly. The father stood guard until morning, but the next night it happened again, and the night after. Blankets were pulled, pillows were moved. Sometimes they were thrown across the room. Sometimes they were placed carefully on the floor. It seemed random. It seemed purposeful. No one could tell which. The family began sleeping in the same room. They pushed their beds together. They thought there was safety in numbers. They thought whatever was happening would leave them alone if they stayed together. They were wrong. The invisible presence seemed to grow stronger. It pulled hair. It pinched skin. It slapped faces in the dark. The children would wake crying with red marks on their cheeks. The parents would comfort them, but they had no answers. They had no way to stop what was happening. Your body is so relaxed now, so still. You might already be drifting into sleep. If you are, that is good. Let the story wash over you like water. Let it carry you into dreams. There is no need to hold on to every word. Just let it flow. The father finally told others what was happening. He spoke to neighbors, to friends from church, to anyone who might have advice. Some people believed him. Some did not. Some said it was the devil. Some said it was a spirit. Some said it was punishment for sin. The mother prayed constantly. She read from the Bible every night. She sprinkled salt in the corners of rooms. She hung herbs above the doors. Old remedies, old protections. Things her mother had taught her. Things passed down through generations. Nothing worked. The disturbances continued. They grew more bold, more aggressive. The invisible presence seemed to delight in tormenting the family, in keeping them awake, in filling their home with fear and exhaustion. People began to visit the farm. Word had spread. The story had traveled from neighbor to neighbor, from town to town. People came to see if the tales were true, to witness the strangeness for themselves. And they did witness it. Many people saw things they could not explain. They heard the knocking. They felt the cold spots that appeared in certain rooms. They watched objects move on their own. Candles blown out by invisible breath. Chairs rocking with no one in them. Doors opening and closing by themselves. Some visitors ran from the house. Some stayed to pray. Some tried to command the spirit to leave. Some tried to communicate with it, to ask what it wanted, why it was there. And then it began to speak. Let your mind float freely now. You do not need to understand everything. You do not need to remember every detail. You only need to rest, to listen with the softest part of your attention, to let the words become like a lullage, like a gentle rain, like wind through leaves. The voice was strange. Witnesses described it in different ways. Some said it was a whisper. Some said it was a shriek. Some said it sounded like multiple voices speaking at once, like a chorus of whispers overlapping and echoing. It spoke at night. It answered questions sometimes. It made claims. It told stories. It seemed to know things about people that it should not know. Secret things, private things, things that made people uncomfortable. The family asked it what it was. The voice gave different answers. Sometimes it said it was a spirit. Sometimes it said it was a witch. Sometimes it laughed and refused to say. It seemed to enjoy the confusion, the mystery. The voice called itself names. It claimed to be someone who had died, someone who had been wronged, someone seeking revenge. But the stories changed. The details did not match. It was difficult to know what was true, what was invented, what was meant to mislead. The father asked why it had come, why it tormented his family. The voice said he knew why. It said he had done something in the past, something he had hidden. The father denied this. He said he was a good man, a faithful man. He had done no wrong. The voice laughed. It said there were secrets in his heart, lies he had told, debts he had not paid. The father grew angry. He demanded the voice leave. He commanded it in the name of God. But the voice only laughed harder. It said God was not listening. It said God had sent it. The mother wept. She begged the presence to leave them in peace, to tell them what it wanted so they could give it and be free. The voice said it wanted nothing. It said it wanted everything. It said it would stay until it was finished. Your breathing is a gentle tide now, rising and falling, rising and falling. You are barely holding on to consciousness. You are barely here. You are drifting in the space between waking and sleeping, between the story and your dreams. Months turned into years. The haunting did not stop. The family could not escape it. They tried to leave the farm, but the voice followed them. It tormented them wherever they went. So they returned. They accepted their fate. They learned to live with the strangeness. The daughter grew older. She became a young woman, and the voice seemed to focus on her more than the others. It spoke to her often. It woke her in the night. It whispered things in her ear. It made her life difficult. She became ill. She grew weak and tired. The voice said it was making her sick. It said it would not stop. It said she would suffer until a certain time came, a time it would not name. The family brought doctors. They brought preachers. They brought anyone who might help. The doctors found no illness, The preachers prayed, but nothing changed. The girl continued to weaken. She stayed in bed most days. She barely ate. She barely spoke. The father begged the voice to stop. He offered anything. He said he would give up the farm. He would confess any sin. He would do anything to save his daughter. The voice said there was nothing he could do. It said the time was set. It said what would happen would happen. The girl died. She passed quietly in her bed one morning. The voice had been silent that night. The house had been still. When dawn came, she was gone. The family grieved. The father blamed himself. The mother could not stop crying. The remaining children were quiet and lost. The farm felt empty, even though the voice was still there. But after the daughter died, the voice changed. It became quieter, less frequent. It no longer tormented the family every night. It would appear sometimes. It would knock or whisper. But it was not the same. It was as if it had gotten what it wanted, as if its purpose was fulfilled. Time passed. The father grew old. His health failed. The voice spoke to him in his final days. It said his time had come. It said it had been waiting. It said it would take him now. And he died. Just as the voice had said. He died in his sleep with his family around him. And with his death the voice finally stopped. It did not return. It did not speak again. The haunting was over. Let yourself go now. Let yourself sink into complete rest. The story is ending. The mystery remains. But you do not need answers. You do not need to understand. You only need to sleep. The remaining family members stayed on the farm for a while, but eventually they left. They could not live in the house where so much strangeness had happened, where they had lost so much. They moved away. They started new lives. They tried to forget, but others remembered. The story spread. People came to see the farm, to walk the land, to stand in the empty house and listen. Some claimed they heard things, whispers, knocking, footsteps. Some said they felt cold spots, saw shadows, felt unseen hands touch them. The farm changed ownership many times. Some people stayed, some left quickly. Some said the place was cursed. Some said it was just old. Just full of normal creaks and sounds. Just a place where tragedy had happened and memory lingered. Years became decades. Decades became a century. The original house fell into disrepair. The land was divided and sold. New houses were built. New families moved in. The area changed, grew, became modern. But the story did not die. It was written down. It was investigated. People studied it. They tried to find explanations. They looked for evidence of fraud. They looked for proof that it was real. They found neither. The story remained a mystery, an unsolved riddle, a legend that would not fade. Some believed it was real, that something truly haunted that family, something beyond understanding, something that existed in the spaces between what we know and what we fear. Some believed it was a hoax, that the family invented the story for attention, that they created the sounds themselves, that it was all theater and tricks. Some believed it was something in between, that the family experienced something unusual, something that started as one thing and became another through retelling, through imagination, through the human need to make sense of what frightens us. Your mind is quiet now. Your thoughts are like clouds drifting across a distant sky. You barely notice them. You barely care. You are sinking deeper and deeper into rest, into peace, into the soft darkness of sleep. What really happened on that farm? What was the voice? Where did it come from? Why did it torment that family? These questions have no certain answers. They float in the air like morning mist. They remain part of the mystery, part of the legend. Perhaps there are things in this world we cannot explain, things that exist beyond our understanding, things that move in shadows and speak from emptiness, things that watch and wait and sometimes reach out to touch our lives. Or perhaps there is always an explanation. Perhaps what seems supernatural is simply natural in a way we have not discovered yet. Perhaps the mind plays tricks. Perhaps fear creates what it expects to find. Perhaps stories grow in the telling until truth becomes impossible to separate from fiction. The farm is quiet now. The family is long gone. The house is dust. The land has healed. Whatever was there has either left or become so quiet that no one notices anymore. But sometimes on certain nights people say they still hear things. Faint sounds on the wind. Whispers in the trees. Knocking that seems to come from nowhere. They say the story is not over, that it never ends, that some hauntings last forever. But you do not need to worry about this. You are far from that place. You are safe in your own bed, in your own time. The story is just a story. The legend is just words. You can let it all drift away now. You can let it fade into the darkness behind your closed eyes. Sleep is waiting for you. It has been waiting patiently while you listened, while you traveled through time with me, while you visited a place of mystery and strangeness. Now it is time to let go, to stop listening, to surrender to rest. Your body knows how to sleep. It does not need instruction. It does not need permission. It only needs you to stop resisting, to stop thinking, to stop holding on. Let go of the story. Let go of the questions. Let go of everything. The legend will still be there tomorrow if you want to think about it, if you want to wonder and imagine. But right now there is only sleep, only the soft pull of unconsciousness, only the gentle fading of awareness. You are so tired. You have been tired for a long time. Your body is heavy. Your mind is slow. Your thoughts are dissolving like sugar in water. Soon there will be nothing left, nothing but the deep quiet of sleep. The Bell family is at rest now. The daughter sleeps in a place where no voice can reach her. The father is beyond the reach of any haunting. The mother has found peace. The children have grown and lived and died and become part of the same soil their ancestors walked. And you too can rest. You too can find that peace, that quiet, that letting go of all that troubles and tires you. Breathe slowly. Breathe deeply. Let each breath take you further from consciousness, further from thought, further from the world of waking. The legend remains. It always will. It lives in books and websites and conversations. It lives in the imaginations of those who hear it. It lives in the questions that cannot be answered, in the mystery that cannot be solved. But it does not live here with you tonight. It does not touch you. It does not disturb your rest. It is only a story. Only words spoken into darkness. Only an old tale told to help you sleep. And you are sleeping now. Or nearly sleeping. You are in that beautiful space where the world fades away, where time loses meaning, where nothing matters but the softness and warmth and quiet. There is no knocking at your walls, no whispers in your room, no unseen hands reaching for you. There is only peace, only stillness, only the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. The farm is far away. The family is long gone. The voice is silent. The haunting is over. But the story continues in its own way, in the minds of those who hear it, in the legends that pass from generation to generation, in the human need to explain what frightens us, to understand what we cannot see, to make sense of the senseless. Maybe that is all any haunting is. A story we tell ourselves. A way to give shape to fear. A way to make the unknown known. A way to bring order to chaos. Or maybe some hauntings are real. Maybe some voices speak from beyond. Maybe some presences linger long after they should be gone. Maybe the line between the living and the dead is thinner than we think. Maybe there are doors that open both ways. Maybe we are never as alone as we believe. But these thoughts are fading now. You are barely listening. You are barely here. You are drifting in dreams. You are floating in the space where consciousness dissolves. The Bell Witch. That is what the legend calls it. That is the name that has lasted through time. A witch who haunted a family, who tormented them, who claimed their lives. But what is a witch? What makes something deserve that name? Is it power? Is it malice? Is it simply something we cannot understand, and so we label it with an old word? A word full of fear and mystery? The word does not matter. The name does not matter. What matters is that something happened, whether real or imagined, whether supernatural or natural. Something happened that changed that family forever. That made their story into legend. And now their legend has helped you. It has carried you to the edge of sleep. It has filled your mind with images and questions and a soft kind of wondering. It has distracted you from whatever kept you awake. It has given you something to focus on other than your own thoughts. And now it is time to release even this, to let the story go, to let everything go. You are so close to sleep now, so very close. Just a few more breaths, just a few more moments of letting go, just a little more surrender. The house on the farm is empty. The fields are overgrown. The barn has fallen. The fences are gone. Nature has reclaimed what was once tamed. The forest has grown back. The land has healed. And so can you. You can heal from whatever troubles you. You can rest from whatever tires you. You can find peace from whatever disturbs you. Sleep is the great healer. Sleep is the place where we let go of the day, where we stop trying, where we stop fighting, where we simply exist in the most basic way. Breathing, being, resting. You have earned this rest. You have worked hard. You have done what you needed to do. Now you can stop. Now you can let others carry the world for a while. Now you can disappear into sleep. The legend says the Bell Witch promised she would return, that she said she would come back after many years, that she would visit the family again, that the haunting was not truly over. But that time has never come, or if it came, no one noticed. The years have passed. The generations have turned. The promise was forgotten, or it was never real to begin with. Some promises are not kept. Some threats are empty. Some mysteries solve themselves simply by fading away. Time is the great eraser. Time wears away even the strongest haunting. Time turns even the most frightening legend into a bedtime story. And that is all this is now. A bedtime story. A tale told to help you sleep. Nothing more. Nothing less. Your eyes are closed. They have been closed for a long time. You might not remember when you closed them. You might not remember much of the story. You might be already dreaming, already gone. If you are still hearing these words, it is only barely. It is only with the smallest part of your mind, the part that stays aware even in sleep, the part that keeps you breathing, that keeps your heart beating, that watches over you in the darkness. That part knows you are safe. It knows there is nothing to fear. It knows the story is fiction or history or something in between. It knows that whatever happened to that family long ago has nothing to do with you here and now. You are in your own place, your own time, your own safe space, and you can rest completely. The Bell family had no rest for years. They endured night after night of disturbance, of fear, of exhaustion. They suffered in ways we can barely imagine, ways that made their story legendary. But you do not have to suffer. You can rest. You can sleep deeply and peacefully. You can wake refreshed. You can let this night be different from theirs. You can let your story be one of peace rather than haunting. Close your eyes if they are not already closed. Relax your body if it is not already relaxed. Let go of your thoughts if you have not already let go. The story is ending. The legend has been told. The mystery remains unsolved. And that is okay. That is perfect. That is exactly as it should be. Not everything needs an answer. Not everything needs to make sense. Sometimes mystery is enough. Sometimes the question is more interesting than any answer could be. And sometimes we need to simply stop asking, stop wondering, stop thinking, and sleep. Sleep now, sleep deeply, sleep peacefully. Let the legend fade. Let the story become dream. Let the words dissolve into silence. There is no voice calling your name, no presence in your room, no unseen force reaching for you. There is only sleep, only rest, only peace. The Bell Witch haunted one family long ago, but she does not haunt you. Nothing haunts you. You are free. You are safe. You are allowed to rest. So rest now. Rest completely. Let everything go. Let consciousness slip away. Let sleep take you. The farm is quiet. The family is at peace. The legend is told. And you can sleep. Sleep now. Sleep. The woods around the old farm were deep and dark. In the daytime, they were full of life. Birds sang. Squirrels chattered. Deer moved quietly through the underbrush. But at night, the woods changed. They became a different place, a place of shadows and sounds that seemed to carry meaning. The family often heard sounds from the woods. This was normal. This was expected. Farms bordered wilderness in those days. The wild was always close, always present, always just beyond the fence line. But some sounds were different. Some sounds did not match what they knew. Some sounds made them pause, made them listen more carefully, made them wonder what was out there in the darkness. Sometimes they heard singing, faint and distant, like voices carrying through the trees. But when they listened closely, it would stop, or it would change into something else. The wind, perhaps, or an animal they did not recognize. Sometimes they saw lights, small flickering lights moving between the trees, like lanterns being carried, like someone walking through the forest at night. But when the father went to investigate, he found nothing. No person, no explanation, just empty woods and darkness. The neighbors had stories too, old stories passed down, stories about the land itself, about things that had happened there before the farm was built, before anyone remembered. Some said the land had been used for gatherings long ago, meetings held in secret, ceremonies performed under moonlight. Nothing evil, nothing dark, just people doing what people have always done, seeking meaning, seeking connection, seeking something beyond the everyday. Some said there had been sadness on the land, deaths that were tragic, losses that left marks, the kind of events that soak into soil and stone, that become part of a place, that never quite leave. But these were just stories, just speculation, just the way people try to explain what they do not understand, just the human need to find patterns and meaning even in randomness. The father did not believe in such things at first. He was a practical man, a man of faith in God and hard work. He did not put stock in folk tales or superstitions. He believed in what he could see and touch and understand. But the haunting changed him. Month after month of strangeness wore away his certainty, his confidence, his belief that the world made simple sense. He began to wonder, to question, to consider possibilities he had previously dismissed. The mother had always been more open, more willing to believe in things beyond sight. She had been raised with stories, with remedies, with an understanding that the world held mysteries, that not everything could be explained by logic alone. She tried to protect her family with what she knew, with prayers and rituals, with objects placed in certain ways, with words spoken at certain times. Some of these practices were from the church, some were older, some were a blend of both. But nothing worked. Nothing stopped the voice. Nothing ended the torment. She began to feel helpless, to doubt everything she had believed, to wonder if she had failed her family somehow, if there was something more she should have done, some knowledge she lacked. The children coped in different ways. Some became quiet and withdrawn. Some became defiant. Some tried to pretend nothing was happening. Some embraced the strangeness and tried to communicate with it, to befriend it, to make peace with what they could not escape. The oldest son tried to be strong, to be the man his father needed him to be. He helped with the farm work. He watched over his younger siblings. He tried to hide his own fear, his own exhaustion, his own growing despair. The youngest child was too small to fully understand. She knew something was wrong. She knew her family was upset. But she did not grasp the full scope of what was happening. In some ways, this protected her. In some ways, it made things harder. She could not understand why everyone was so afraid of sounds in the night. Your mind is wandering now, drifting from thought to thought, from image to image. This is good. This is the path to sleep. Let your thoughts float freely. Do not try to hold on to anything. Just let everything move and shift and fade. The voice seemed to know things it should not know. This was one of the most disturbing aspects of the haunting. It would mention events from the past, conversations that had happened in private, secrets that had been carefully kept. It told the mother about a time in her childhood she had never spoken of. A moment of fear and shame she had buried deep. She was shaken. How could the voice know? Who could have told it? There was no answer that made sense. It told the father about business dealings that had gone badly, about debts he had not fully repaid, about corners he had cut when times were hard. Nothing terrible, nothing that made him an evil man. But things he was not proud of. Things he had hoped were forgotten. It told the children things about each other, small betrayals, minor lies, the normal secrets of siblings growing up together. It seemed to delight in causing friction between them, in making them distrust each other, in turning the family against itself. Some visitors believed this proved the voice was supernatural, that it had powers beyond human understanding, that it could see into minds and hearts and hidden places. Others believed it proved the voice was a human trick, that someone was spying on the family, listening at windows, reading private papers, gathering information to use against them, that the haunting was an elaborate revenge plot. But if it was a trick, who was behind it? Who had such detailed knowledge? Who could be so persistent? Who could avoid being caught despite the many people who came to investigate? The mystery deepened rather than resolved. Every answer led to more questions. Every explanation had holes. The truth remained elusive, slippery, just beyond reach. You are so tired of questions, so tired of seeking answers. You want to simply rest, simply be, simply stop thinking and wondering and analyzing. You can. You have permission. This is your time to stop, your time to surrender, your time to let everything go. The farm had been in the family for generations. The father had inherited it from his father. His father had cleared the land and built the first small cabin, had worked until his hands bled and his back bent, had created something from wilderness. The father was proud of this legacy, proud to continue the work, proud to pass it on to his own children. The farm represented everything he valued: hard work, persistence, faith, family. But the haunting made him question everything, made him wonder if the land wanted them there, if they had somehow offended something by building and farming and claiming ownership, if the earth itself was rejecting them. These thoughts troubled him deeply. They went against everything he had been taught, everything he believed. But they came to him in the night, in the hours when the voice was active and sleep was impossible, in the moments when exhaustion made his mind vulnerable to doubts. The mother worried about the children, about what this experience was doing to them, about what scars they would carry, about what they would believe about the world after living through this. She tried to maintain normalcy. She kept to routines. She prepared meals at the same times. She insisted on chores and lessons. She created structure where chaos threatened. She hoped this would help. would give them something solid to hold on to, something that remained constant even when nothing else did. But it was hard. The exhaustion wore on everyone. The lack of sleep, the constant vigilance, the never knowing when the voice would speak or what it would do. The stress seeped into everything, into every interaction, every moment. The family grew short with each other. Tempers flared. Patience wore thin. Love remained, but it was strained, tested, pushed to its limits. They prayed together every night. They held hands and asked for deliverance, for protection, for understanding, for peace. Sometimes the voice mocked their prayers. Sometimes it joined in. Sometimes it remained silent as if even it was respectful of this moment. Your breathing is so slow now, so steady. Each breath takes you deeper. Each exhale releases more. You are barely conscious, barely present. You are in the twilight between waking and sleep. The beautiful liminal space where anything is possible and nothing matters. The daughter, who became the focus of the haunting, was gentle and kind. She was the one who cared for injured animals, who picked wildflowers for her mother, who sang lullabies to her younger siblings, who saw the good in everyone and everything. Why the voice targeted her was never clear. She had done nothing wrong. She was innocent in every way. Perhaps that was why. Perhaps innocence attracted the voice. Perhaps it fed on goodness. Perhaps it sought to destroy what was pure. Or perhaps it was random. Perhaps she was simply unlucky. Perhaps the voice would have focused on whoever was there. Perhaps there was no reason, no pattern, no meaning. She endured the attention with grace at first. She tried not to complain, tried not to burden her family with her suffering. She knew they were all struggling. She did not want to make things worse. But as her health declined, she could not hide it. She grew pale and thin. Her energy faded. She spent more and more time in bed. She stopped singing, stopped smiling, stopped being the bright presence she had always been. The family watched her fade. They felt helpless. The doctors had no answers. The medicines did nothing. The prayers seemed to fall on deaf ears. They were losing her, and there was nothing they could do. The voice said it was draining her, taking her life force, consuming her slowly. It said it needed her energy, her youth, her vitality. It said when it was done with her, it would be strong enough to do what it came to do. What that was, it never fully explained. The voice spoke in riddles and contradictions. It hinted at purposes and plans. It suggested knowledge it might or might not actually have. It kept everyone guessing, kept them off balance. The daughter tried to be brave. She smiled when visitors came. She pretended she was feeling better. She did not want pity. She did not want to be treated as if she were already gone. But in the quiet moments with her mother, she let her fear show. She cried. She asked why this was happening. She said she did not want to die. She had so much she wanted to do, so much life she wanted to live. The mother held her and had no answers. She could only promise that she was loved, that she would not be alone, that whatever happened they would face it together. Let your body melt into the surface beneath you. Let every muscle release. Let every tension dissolve. You are supported. You are safe. You need to hold nothing. You need to control nothing. You can simply exist in this moment. Simply be. The community was divided about the haunting. Some people believed completely. They had witnessed things themselves. They had heard the voice, seen objects move, felt the cold presence. They knew something real was happening. Others were skeptical. They thought it was mass hysteria, suggestion, the power of belief creating experiences that were not actually there. They thought the family was deluded or deceiving. Still, others took a middle position. They thought something was happening, but it had a natural explanation. Perhaps the family was being targeted by enemies. Perhaps there were tricks and mechanisms they had not discovered. Perhaps it was all very human and very explainable, if only they could find the right answer. The debates grew heated. Friendships were tested. The community that had once been close-knit and supportive became fractured. People took sides. Accusations were made. Trust broke down. The father felt this acutely. He had been respected, looked up to, considered a leader in the community. Now some people whispered about him, questioned his honesty, suggested he was either foolish or fraudulent. This wounded him deeply. His reputation had mattered, his good name, the respect of his neighbors. Now he felt judged, suspected, isolated. The mother felt it too. Women who had been friends stopped visiting. They did not want their families exposed to whatever was happening. They feared it might be contagious, that it might follow them home, that association with the haunted family might bring danger to their own households. The children were teased at church and in town. Other children were cruel the way children can be. They called the family cursed. They said the devil lived in their house. They made up songs and chants. They threw things. The oldest son got into fights defending his family. His father told him to ignore the taunts, to turn the other cheek. But he could not. His anger had to go somewhere. His frustration needed an outlet. The family became more isolated. They stopped attending social gatherings. They stopped going to town unless necessary. They retreated to their farm, to their house, to each other. In some ways, this brought them closer, united them against the world, made their bond stronger. In other ways, it made everything worse. They had no relief, no respite, no escape from each other or from the haunting. You are drifting further and further from consciousness. The story is becoming dream. The words are becoming sounds without meaning. This is perfect. This is exactly what should happen. Let go completely. Let sleep take you. Time moved strangely during the haunting. Days blurred together. Nights seemed endless. The family lost track of weeks and months. Everything became a continuous present, a perpetual now filled with exhaustion and strangeness. Seasons changed. Summer became fall. Fall became winter. Winter became spring. The farm work continued. Crops were planted and harvested. Animals were tended. Life went on in its way. But nothing felt normal. Nothing felt right. The rhythm of the year was disrupted by the constant disturbance, by the voice that never truly left, by the presence that pervaded everything. The father grew older faster than he should have. The stress aged him. His hair grayed, his face lined, his body bent. He moved like a man 20 years older than he was. The mother's health suffered too. She developed headaches that would not go away, pains in her joints, exhaustion that sleep could not cure. She pushed herself to care for her family, but it cost her. The children grew up too fast. They lost their innocence, their childhood. They became serious and wary. They learned to expect the worst, to trust nothing, to believe that the world was not safe. This was perhaps the greatest tragedy. Not the haunting itself, but what it did to them, what it stole, what it left behind. When the daughter died, something broke in the family, a center that could not hold. They had stayed together through everything, through all the fear and exhaustion and isolation, but her death was too much. It was the wound that would not heal. The father blamed himself. He should have protected her. He was the head of the household. It was his responsibility. He had failed. This belief ate at him, consumed him, destroyed him from within. The mother descended into grief so deep it seemed she might never surface. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped caring for anything. She sat by the window and stared at nothing. She was present, but not present. There, but not there. The remaining children tried to hold things together, but they were children. They could not replace their parents, could not fill the holes left by loss. They did their best, but it was not enough. The farm began to fail. Work went undone. Crops were neglected. Animals were not properly cared for. Everything started to fall apart. Neighbors tried to help. Those who believed, those who had compassion. They brought food. They did chores. They tried to support the family through the crisis. But there was a limit to what they could do. They had their own families, their own farms, their own lives. They could not save the family, could only ease the decline. Your consciousness is barely a flicker now, a tiny flame about to go out. Let it. Let it fade to nothing. Let darkness and silence and sleep take over completely. The voice changed after the daughter died. It became softer, less aggressive, almost gentle at times. As if something in it had also changed, as if it had achieved what it sought or lost its reason for being. It stopped the physical torment. No more pulling blankets, no more slapping, no more throwing objects. It only spoke, only whispered, only made its presence known in subtle ways. The father asked it why. Why had it taken his daughter? Why had it destroyed his family? The voice said it was done. It said the debt was paid. It said he knew what he had done, but he did not know, or he would not say, or the voice was wrong. The answer remained unclear, disputed, lost in the fog of grief and exhaustion. In his final days, the father seemed to accept his fate. He stopped fighting, stopped questioning. He waited for death with something like peace, or maybe just profound exhaustion, the surrender of someone who has no more strength to resist. The voice kept him company in those last days. It spoke gently. It told him stories. It sang songs. It was almost like a friend, like something that had been his companion all along and only now could show a different face. This disturbed the family more than the violence had. This intimacy felt wrong, obscene, as if the voice was claiming victory, as if it was celebrating what it had done. But perhaps the voice was just tired too. Perhaps it had no more energy for cruelty. Perhaps whatever it was or had been was also fading, also ending, also ready for rest. When the father died, the voice spoke one last time. It said goodbye. It said it was leaving. It said it would return someday, but not soon. Not in this lifetime. Not while anyone who remembered remained. And then it was gone. The house fell silent. The presence lifted. The air felt different, lighter, cleaner, as if something heavy had been removed. The family did not celebrate. There was no joy, only numbness, only the vast emptiness left behind by years of torment and recent loss, only the question of what to do now, how to live, how to move forward. They tried for a while. They stayed on the farm. They attempted to rebuild, to create something new from the ruins. But the weight was too much, the memories too painful. The land itself felt tainted. So they left. They sold what they could. They abandoned what they could not. They scattered, each finding their own way, their own path, their own attempt at healing. Some found peace eventually. Some married and had families and tried to create the normalcy they had lost. Some traveled far away and never spoke of what had happened. Some could never escape, could never move past, could never heal. The farm passed through many hands. Each owner stayed for a while and then left. Some reported strange occurrences. Some did not. Some said the place felt wrong. Some noticed nothing unusual. The story grew and changed with each telling. Details were added. Facts were altered. The truth became impossible to separate from fiction. The legend took on a life of its own. Researchers came to investigate. They interviewed anyone who would talk. They searched for evidence. They tried to find logical explanations or proof of the supernatural. They found neither. Only stories, only contradictions, only mystery. You are asleep now. Or so close it makes no difference. The story has done its work. It has carried you to this place of deep rest. You can let it go completely now. You can forget every word. You can simply sleep. The legend says the Bell Witch was the most documented haunting in American history, that more witnesses saw and heard things than in any other case, that the evidence is overwhelming. But evidence is a strange word for things like this. What is evidence of the supernatural? Testimony, experience, the sincere belief of honest people, or is evidence something more solid, something that can be measured and tested and verified? The line between belief and proof has always been blurred. What we believe shapes what we experience. What we experience shapes what we believe. The circle has no beginning and no end. Perhaps the Bell Witch was real. Perhaps it was a genuine spirit or entity. Perhaps there are forces in the world beyond our understanding. Perhaps the family truly suffered at the hands of something supernatural. Or perhaps the haunting was a shared delusion, a psychological phenomenon, a family under stress creating experiences to explain their suffering, a community caught up in fear and suggestion, a tragedy given supernatural explanation because that was easier than facing harder truths. Or perhaps it was something in between, something that started as one thing and became another, something that was both real and imagined, both supernatural and natural, both true and false. The mystery remains. The legend persists. The story is told and retold, and in the telling it serves a purpose. It reminds us that there are things we do not understand, things that frighten us, things that exist in the shadows of our knowledge. It reminds us that we are small, that the world is large, that certainty is a luxury we cannot always afford. That mystery is woven into the fabric of existence, but it also reminds us that we survive, that families endure, that even the darkest nights end, that stories outlive the pain they describe, that we find meaning in what haunts us. Sleep now. The story is finished. The legend has been told. The mystery remains, but you do not need to solve it. You need only rest. Your breathing is so quiet, so peaceful. You are deeply relaxed, completely at ease. There is nothing to do, nowhere to go, nothing to think about. The farm is far away. The family is gone. The voice is silent. The haunting is over. But the story continues. It always will. It lives in words and memories and imagination. It lives in the questions we ask about what is real and what is possible. It lives in the boundary between light and shadow, between known and unknown, between waking and sleeping. And here at this boundary is where you rest, where you have finally found peace, where the story has brought you to exactly where you need to be. Sleep deeply. Sleep peacefully. Sleep without fear or worry or question. The Bell Witch has no power over you. The legend cannot harm you. You are safe in your own time, in your own place, in your own bed. Nothing haunts you. Nothing disturbs you. Nothing prevents you from complete and total rest. The years that followed were marked by silence, a silence so complete it seemed to have weight, to have presence, the kind of silence that fills spaces where noise once lived, where chaos once reigned. The property stood empty for a time. The house weathered and wore, paint peeled from wooden boards, shingles fell from the roof, windows cracked and broke, the porch sagged. The stairs creaked and rotted. Nature began its slow work of reclamation. Vines grew up the sides of the house. They wound through broken windows. They climbed posts and wrapped around railings. They covered the structure in green. In life, in the relentless push of growing things. The fields returned to wild grasses. Seeds carried by wind and birds found purchase in soil that had once been cultivated. Thistles and wildflowers bloomed where corn had grown. Small trees sprouted where tobacco had been planted. The land healed itself, returned to what it had been before human hands shaped it. Animals moved into the barn. Raccoons nested in the loft. Owls roosted in the rafters. Mice built elaborate tunnel systems in the hay that remained. Snakes found cool places in the stone foundation. The barn became a haven for creatures who had been excluded when the family lived there. The fence posts leaned and fell. The split rails rotted and collapsed. The boundaries that had marked property and ownership disappeared. The farm merged back into the forest, back into the wild, back into itself. You are so relaxed now, so still. Your body has found its perfect resting position. You need not move, need not adjust. You can remain exactly as you are, breathing slowly, existing peacefully, drifting through this story like a leaf on a gentle stream. Travelers passing on the road would sometimes stop and look at the abandoned farm. They would wonder who had lived there, why they had left, what stories the empty house could tell if houses could speak. Some knew the legend. They would point and whisper. They would tell their companions about the Bell Witch, about the haunting, about the family who had suffered and fled. They would look at the house with fear and fascination, with the thrill that comes from safe distance to tragedy. Others knew nothing. They saw only another failed farm, another family who could not make it work, another dream that had withered and died. They felt sad in a vague way, the way we feel sad at any evidence of loss, any reminder that nothing lasts forever. Children dared each other to approach the house, to touch the door, to look through windows, to go inside if they were brave enough. These dares were rarely fulfilled. The house had a presence even in emptiness, a feeling that kept people away, that suggested some things were better left alone. Stories grew about what happened to those who entered. A boy who went in at dusk and came out screaming. A girl who touched the door and felt something push back. A man who spent a night inside and emerged changed, quieter, haunted himself by what he had experienced. These stories were probably exaggerations, probably inventions. The way stories grow when they are repeated, when details are added for effect, when truth matters less than impact. But they kept people away. They protected the property in their own way. They created a barrier made of fear and superstition. Your eyelids are so heavy. If you tried to open them, you could not. They are sealed with the weight of deep relaxation, with the surrender to sleep, with the body's wisdom that knows it is time to rest completely. Years passed, the seasons turned. Summer heat beat down on the empty house, winter snow piled on the sagging roof. Spring rains leaked through holes and rotted wood. Fall winds rattled loose boards and scattered leaves through broken windows. The house aged. It shifted and settled. It sank slightly into the earth. It became less a structure and more a skeleton. The bones of a building showing through skin of wood and paint, a reminder of what had been, a marker of passage. Birds nested in the eaves. Their songs filled the empty rooms. They raised generation after generation in the shelter the house provided. To them, it was simply a good place, high and dry and safe. They knew nothing of hauntings or legends. They lived their simple lives unconcerned with human history. A tree grew up through the porch. A seed had landed in a crack, found soil and moisture, put down roots that split boards and pushed through gaps. The tree grew strong and straight. It was young and vigorous while the house was old and dying. Life persisting where life had once been lived. Wildflowers bloomed in the yard where a garden had been, where the mother had grown vegetables and herbs, where she had worked in the early morning when the air was cool and the light was soft. The flowers knew nothing of her. They simply grew where conditions allowed, where sun and soil and water met in the right combination. The well still stood, its stone sides solid and enduring. Water still collected at the bottom, cold and clear and pure. Animals drank from it. Birds bathed in the shallow puddles around its base. It served the land still, even when the people were gone. Let your jaw go slack. Let your tongue rest softly in your mouth. Let your facial muscles smooth and relax. There is no expression to hold. No mask to maintain. You can let your face be completely neutral. completely at rest. Eventually, someone bought the property. A family looking for land, looking for a place to start fresh. They knew nothing of the legend. They saw only opportunity. Good soil, a water source, space to build a life. They tore down what remained of the old house. The structure was too damaged to save, too rotted and broken to repair. It was easier to clear it away and start again, to build something new rather than restore something old. The man worked for weeks, pulling down boards, removing nails, separating wood that could be salvaged from wood that was only good for burning. It was hard labor, physical and exhausting, but satisfying in its way, the clearing away of the past to make room for the future. His wife helped when she could. She gathered stones from the old foundation. She thought they might use them for something, a wall perhaps, or a path. She liked the idea of incorporating something old into their new home, of honoring what had come before. The children played in the clearing where the house had been. They dug in the dirt and found things, old nails and bits of glass, fragments of pottery and metal, small treasures that meant nothing and everything, evidence that people had lived here, that lives had been lived in this place. They found other things, too, a small carved wooden horse, a button with an etched pattern, a thimble, a spoon bent and tarnished. Personal objects, things that had been held and used and lost, things that carried the weight of vanished hands. The mother cleaned these objects. She felt a strange connection to whoever had owned them. To the woman who had used the thimble to sew, to the child who had played with the wooden horse, she wondered about them, where they had gone, what their lives had been like. The father was less sentimental. He saw only old trash, only things left behind because they were not worth taking, only evidence of carelessness or haste. He wanted to throw it all away, to start completely fresh with no remnants of the past. But his wife kept the items. She put them in a box. She stored them in the barn they built. She could not say exactly why, only that it felt wrong to discard them, that they deserved to be kept, to be remembered, to remain part of the place. Your heartbeat is slow and steady, a gentle drum in the distance. You can feel it if you pay attention. But there is no need to pay attention, no need to focus on anything. You can let your awareness drift wherever it wants to go, or nowhere at all. The new family built their house in a different spot, not where the old one had stood. They chose a location that felt better to them, that had good light and good views, that seemed to call to them in some way. They never experienced anything unusual. No strange sounds, no moving objects, no voices in the night. They lived normal lives, happy lives. They raised their children and worked their land and grew old together in peace. Sometimes they heard stories from neighbors about the place where they lived, about what had happened there long ago, about the famous haunting. They listened politely. They smiled and nodded, but they did not believe. Their experience was so different, so peaceful, so unmarked by strangeness. How could they believe in a legend when their own lives contradicted it, when nothing in their years on the property suggested anything supernatural had ever occurred? They concluded the stories were exaggerated, that the original family had experienced something, but it had grown in the telling, that people liked to believe in such things, that legends persisted because they were interesting, not because they were true, and perhaps they were right. Perhaps the new family's experience proved that whatever had been was gone, that hauntings end, that places heal, that the past does not always control the present. Or perhaps they were simply lucky. Perhaps the voice had meant what it said about leaving. Perhaps its business was with that specific family. Perhaps it had no interest in others who came later. Perhaps it slept, satisfied, complete in whatever purpose it had served. The new family's children grew up hearing the legend but not believing it. It was just a story to them, like fairy tales or ghost stories told around campfires. Entertaining, but not real. something to make them shiver but not actually frightening. They would sometimes boast to friends about living on the famous haunted property, about sleeping where the Bell Witch had been, about their bravery in staying where others had fled, but it was all performance, all show. They felt no real fear. One of the children became fascinated by history. She collected stories about the area. She interviewed old people who remembered other old people who had known people connected to the original family. She tried to trace the truth, to find out what had really happened. She discovered that memory is unreliable, that each person she spoke to had a different version, that facts were slippery and changed depending on who told them, that separating truth from fiction was nearly impossible after so much time had passed. She learned that some descendants of the original family still lived in the area, that they rarely spoke about what had happened, that they considered it private family business, that they resented how the story had become public, how their ancestors' suffering had become entertainment. She understood this. She tried to be respectful. She did not push where she was not welcome. She accepted that some stories belonged to those who lived them, that not everything needs to be shared or explained or made public. Let your thoughts become like clouds, drifting across the sky of your mind. You can watch them pass. Or you can ignore them completely. They have no power over you, no ability to disturb your peace. You are separate from them, above them, beyond them. In time, the fascination faded. Life moved on. The property changed hands again and again. Each new owner brought their own story, their own experience, their own relationship with the land. Some knew the legend and did not care. Some knew and were intrigued. Some never learned about it at all. The land held all their stories without judgment, without preference. It was simply land, earth and stone and water, growing things and living things, existing as it had always existed. The forest grew thicker around the property. Trees that had been saplings became tall and strong. Their roots went deep. Their branches reached high. They created shade and shelter. They dropped leaves that became soil. They provided homes for countless creatures. A creek ran through the property. It had always been there, flowing quietly through trees, cutting its slow path through stone and earth. The original family had known this creek, had drawn water from it, had listened to its voice, had found peace in its constant movement. The creek remained unchanged, unchanging. It flowed the same now as it had then, as it had for hundreds of years before humans came, as it would for hundreds of years after they were gone. It was eternal in a way humans never are, constant in a way that brings comfort. Children from various families played in the creek over the years. They waded in cool water on hot days. They caught crawfish and small fish. They built dams with stones and sticks. They found fossils in the creek bed. Ancient shells and plant impressions, evidence of time beyond imagining. The water flowed over these fossils, over the stones, over the sand and mud. It flowed past the spot where the original house had stood, past the new house, past the barn, past the fields. It flowed without memory, without knowledge of what had happened on its banks, without concern for human drama. This was oddly comforting to think about, that nature continues regardless of our stories, that the world goes on with or without us, that we are small and temporary, that our tragedies and triumphs are brief flickers in the long story of the earth. Your body is sinking, melting into the surface beneath you. You can barely tell where you end and the bed begins. You are becoming one with your surroundings, dissolving into comfort, into warmth, into the darkness behind your closed eyes. Historians continued to study the Bell Witch legend. It became a topic of academic interest. Papers were written, books were published, theories were proposed and debated. The story was examined from every angle. Some researchers focused on psychological explanations. They suggested the family had experienced shared delusions brought on by stress, by isolation, by religious fervor, by the power of suggestion. They pointed to similar cases throughout history, patterns that repeated. Others looked for supernatural explanations. They studied theories about spirits and entities, about places where the veil between worlds was thin, about conditions that might allow such phenomena to occur. They took the testimony seriously. They believed the witnesses were honest about what they experienced. Still others looked for fraud. They investigated whether the family had staged the haunting for attention or profit, whether someone else had targeted them with elaborate tricks, whether the whole thing was an elaborate hoax that got out of control. Each approach found evidence to support its conclusions. Each could explain certain aspects of the story, but none could explain everything. The complete truth remained elusive, hidden in the space between facts and testimony, between belief and skepticism. This frustrated some researchers. They wanted definitive answers. They wanted to solve the mystery. They wanted to be the one who finally explained what had really happened. But others found beauty in the uncertainty. They appreciated that some mysteries remain mysterious, that not everything can be neatly categorized and explained, that there is value in questions that have no clear answers. The legend became part of local culture. Schools taught it as history, as folklore, as an example of how stories spread and change. Children grew up knowing about the Bell Witch. It was part of their heritage, part of what made their place special. Tourists came to visit the site, to walk where the family had walked, to stand where the house had been, to feel whatever might be felt in a place where such strangeness had allegedly occurred. Some claimed to feel something, a heaviness in the air, a cold spot, a sense of being watched, a feeling of sadness or anger. They took photos hoping to capture orbs or shadows or something that might be evidence. Most photos showed only trees and buildings, normal things, but occasionally there were anomalies. Lights that might be dust or might be something else, shadows that might be tricks of perspective or might be something more. Others felt nothing unusual. They walked the property and experienced only a pleasant woods, birds singing, breeze moving through leaves, sunlight filtering through branches, peace and beauty and normalcy. They concluded the legend was just that, a legend, a story, nothing real. Both groups went away satisfied. Those who wanted to believe found reasons to believe. Those who wanted to dismiss found reasons to dismiss. The site accommodated all interpretations. It held space for every possibility. Your mind is so quiet now. Thoughts come slowly, spaced far apart, fading before they fully form. You are in the deep place, the place beyond thinking, beyond analyzing, beyond anything but pure existence. A museum was eventually established, not on the original property but nearby. It collected artifacts and documents related to the haunting. It presented the story in a balanced way, acknowledging both the legend and the uncertainty. Visitors could read testimony from witnesses, see objects that had belonged to the family, look at maps and diagrams, watch videos about the case, form their own conclusions. The museum became popular. People came from far away to visit. The legend had spread beyond the local area. It had become nationally known. One of America's most famous ghost stories. One of the most documented. One of the most enduring. This popularity brought money to the area. Shops sold Bell Witch memorabilia. Tours were offered. Events were held. The legend became an industry, a source of revenue, a tourist attraction. Some people appreciated this. They were glad their area was known for something. Glad visitors came and supported local businesses. Glad the story was being kept alive. Others felt it was disrespectful, that it commercialized tragedy, that it turned suffering into entertainment, that it was ghoulish to profit from the family's pain. Both perspectives were valid. Both contained truth. The tension between them was never fully resolved. It existed in the background, a low-grade discomfort that some felt and others ignored. The original family's descendants had mixed feelings. Some participated in the tourism. They gave talks and wrote books and shared what they knew. They felt it was important to keep the story alive, to honor their ancestors by remembering what they endured. Others wanted nothing to do with it. They changed their names. They moved away. They refused to speak about it publicly. They felt the legend had caused enough trouble. They wanted to be known for themselves, not for something that happened generations ago. This split in the family mirrored the larger split in the community, in how people related to the legend. Some embraced it, some rejected it, some lived somewhere in between. Your breathing is barely noticeable now. The smallest rise and fall. So gentle, so easy. Your body breathing itself without any effort from you, without any thought or control. Just the automatic wisdom of your physical form doing what it needs to do to sustain life while you rest. As decades passed, the story changed in subtle ways. New details were added. Old details were forgotten. The legend evolved like a living thing, like something with its own life. Its own process of growth and adaptation. Some versions emphasized the supernatural elements. They made the haunting more dramatic, more violent, more terrifying. These versions were popular for entertainment, for movies and books and television shows. Other versions emphasized the human elements, the family's suffering, their resilience, their attempts to maintain normalcy in the face of the inexplicable. These versions were more thoughtful, more interested in psychology and emotion than in scares. Still, other versions tried to demystify the story. They proposed rational explanations, natural causes for the phenomena, human trickery behind the apparent supernatural events. These versions were popular with skeptics, with those who needed the world to make sense. All these versions coexisted. They were all part of the legend now. All part of how the story was told and understood. No single version could claim to be definitive. No single interpretation could claim to be correct. This multiplicity was actually a strength. It kept the story alive. It gave people something to debate, to discuss, to return to again and again. It made the legend resilient, able to adapt to changing times and changing beliefs. In the modern era, the legend took on new dimensions. It was discussed on podcasts and websites. It was analyzed in online forums. It was shared through social media. It reached audiences the original family could never have imagined. Young people discovered the story and became fascinated. They researched it obsessively. They visited the site. They created content about it. They kept the legend alive for a new generation. Some of this new interest was serious. Some was casual. Some was ironic. Some was genuine. All of it contributed to the legend's continued existence. All of it ensured the story would not be forgotten. The original family would have been amazed. They had suffered privately, in a small community, in a time when news traveled slowly. They could not have known their experience would echo through centuries, would touch lives far removed from their own in time and space. Would they have wanted this? Would they have appreciated becoming legend, or would they have preferred obscurity, quiet lives and quiet deaths and quiet forgetting? There is no way to know. They are beyond asking, beyond answering, beyond caring about their fame or lack thereof. They exist only in the stories now, only in the documents and testimony, only in the legend that bears a name they may or may not have used. Let everything fade now. Every image, every thought, every awareness. Let it all dissolve into darkness, into silence, into the void of deep sleep. You're ready. You have traveled far through this story. Now you can rest. Now you can let it all go. The legend raises questions that go beyond one family's experience. Questions about belief and reality. About how we know what we know, about the limits of understanding, about what is possible and what is impossible. These are old questions. Humanity has always grappled with them. Every culture has stories of the supernatural, of spirits and ghosts and entities that exist beyond normal perception, of places where strange things happen, of people who encounter the inexplicable. Are these stories all false, all delusion, all misunderstanding of natural phenomena? Or is there something more, something we have not yet learned to measure or understand? Something that exists in the gaps of our knowledge? Science has no definitive answer. Science can explain many things that once seemed supernatural, but it cannot explain everything. And when it cannot explain, it tends to dismiss. To say that what cannot be measured does not exist, that what cannot be replicated is not real. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just because we cannot prove something does not mean it is not true. Just because we cannot explain something does not mean it is impossible. This is the space where legends live, in the uncertainty, in the gap between what we know and what we wonder, in the question mark that follows every definitive statement, in the possibility that we might be wrong about what we think we understand. The Bell family's experience sits in this space. It cannot be proven. It cannot be disproven. It exists in testimony and documents and stories, in the conviction of witnesses, in the skepticism of doubters, in the endless debate between belief and disbelief. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps the value of the story is not in whether it is true, but in what it makes us think about, what questions it raises, what possibilities it suggests, what it reveals about how we think about reality and belief and knowledge. The family suffered. That much seems clear. Whether their suffering came from a supernatural source or a natural one, the suffering was real. The fear was real. The exhaustion was real. The loss was real. And that is what makes the story worth remembering. Not because it might prove the existence of ghosts or spirits, but because it reminds us of human vulnerability, of how fragile our sense of safety and control really is, of how quickly the normal can become strange, of how fear can consume us. It reminds us to have compassion for those who suffer in ways we cannot fully understand, for those whose experiences do not match our own, for those who believe differently than we do. It reminds us that mystery is part of life, that not everything can be explained or controlled, that sometimes we must live with uncertainty, with questions that have no answers, with experiences that resist interpretation. Your consciousness is barely present now, just the faintest awareness remaining, like the last star before dawn, like the final ember of a dying fire, so small, so dim, about to fade completely. Let it fade, let it go, let sleep take you completely. In the end, what happened to the Bell family does not matter as much as we might think. The facts are lost to time. The truth is unknowable. What remains is the story, and the story has its own truth, its own reality, its own power. The story tells us that there are things we do not understand, that the world is larger and stranger than we usually acknowledge, that our explanations and categories and systems of knowledge have limits. It tells us that people experience things that cannot be easily dismissed, that testimony and witness carry weight even when they cannot be verified, that belief is real even if what is believed in is not. It tells us that places hold memory, that land absorbs the lives lived upon it, that some locations feel different than others for reasons we cannot fully articulate. It tells us that family bonds are tested by crisis, that suffering can bring people together or drive them apart, that love persists even through horror, that we protect each other as best we can even when we cannot protect enough. It tells us that death comes to everyone, that we cannot escape it, that it takes those we love and eventually takes us too, that this is sad and unfair and also simply how things are. It tells us that stories outlive us, that what we experience can echo far beyond our own lives, that we touch the future in ways we cannot imagine, that we become part of something larger than ourselves. These are not small truths. These are the truths that matter, the truths that help us understand our own lives, our own experiences, our own place in the long story of humanity. So, the Bell Witch legend serves a purpose, not as evidence of the supernatural, not as proof of anything, but as a mirror, as a way of thinking about things that are difficult to think about, as a story that helps us process fear and mystery and loss, and as a story that helps you sleep, that has carried you through this long night, that has occupied your mind and quieted your thoughts and brought you to this place of deep rest. The family is at peace now. Whatever they experienced, whatever they suffered, it is over. They have been gone for many lifetimes. They exist only in memory and legend. And perhaps that is a kind of peace too, to be remembered, to matter to people you will never meet, to have your story told even when all the facts are forgotten. You are at peace now too. Your body is completely relaxed. Your mind is completely quiet. You have listened to this long tale. You have traveled through time and mystery and questions with no answers. And now you can rest. Now you can sleep. Now you can let it all go. The story is finished. The legend is told. The words are fading. The images are dissolving. Soon there will be nothing left. Nothing but darkness and silence and sleep. Let yourself sink into that darkness, into that silence, into that deep, deep sleep. You are safe. You are comfortable. You are ready to rest completely. The Bell Witch cannot harm you. The legend cannot disturb you. The story has no power except the power you give it, and you are giving it none. You are simply sleeping, simply resting, simply existing in the most basic and beautiful way, breathing, being, sleeping. The farm is far away in time and space. The family is gone. The voice is silent. The haunting is over, and you can sleep. Sleep now. Sleep deeply. Sleep peacefully. Sleep. The morning after the haunting ended was strange. The family woke to complete silence. No sounds in the night had disturbed them. No voice had spoken. No objects had moved. They had slept through until dawn, something they had not done in years. At first they did not trust it. They waited. They listened. They expected the voice to return, to laugh at them for believing it was really gone, to punish them for hoping. But the silence continued. Through the morning, through the day, through the next night, through days and weeks. The presence had truly left. The haunting was over. The relief should have been overwhelming, should have brought joy. But the family was too damaged, too tired, too grief-stricken. They could not feel relief. They could only feel numb, empty, lost. The mother tried to return to her routines, to cooking and cleaning and caring for the home. But everything felt different. The house felt different. Her own hands felt different. She moved through motions mechanically, without thought, without feeling. The children did not know how to act. They had lived with strangeness for so long it had become normal. Now, normal felt strange. The quiet felt wrong. They kept expecting sounds that did not come, kept bracing for disturbances that did not happen. The father tried to work the farm, to return to the land, to lose himself in physical labor the way he always had, but his body was weakened. His spirit was broken. He could not work the way he once had. He tired quickly. He made mistakes. He forgot things. Neighbors came to help. They meant well. They brought food and offered labor. They tried to support the family through the aftermath. But their presence was difficult. They asked questions. They looked at everything with curious eyes. They made the family feel like specimens, like oddities to be studied, So the family withdrew. They accepted help when absolutely necessary. But they kept people at arm's length. They protected what little privacy they had left. They tried to heal in their own way, in their own time. But healing did not come. The damage was too deep, the losses too great, the trauma too severe. They were changed in ways that could not be unchanged, marked in ways that could not be erased. Your body knows how to heal in sleep, how to repair and restore, how to process what the waking mind cannot process. Trust your body now. Trust the wisdom of sleep. Trust that rest is doing its work even as you surrender to unconsciousness. The father's death came quickly after the voice said it would. He had been weakening for months. The stress and grief had worn him down. But after the voice spoke his final truth, he declined rapidly, as if he had been holding on for a reason, and that reason was gone. He died peacefully, in his bed, surrounded by what remained of his family. His last words were inaudible, a whisper that no one could make out. Perhaps a prayer, perhaps a goodbye, perhaps just breath leaving a body that could no longer hold it. The mother organized the funeral. She did what needed to be done. She made arrangements. She received visitors. She stood by the grave and listened to prayers. She did it all without crying, without feeling, with the blank face of someone beyond grief. After the funeral, she sat in the house and looked at the walls, at the floors, at the corners where the voice had emanated, at the rooms where her daughter had suffered and died, at the spaces where her family's life had unraveled. She could not stay. She knew this suddenly and completely. She could not live in this house another day, could not sleep in this bed, could not walk these halls, could not breathe this air. The place was poisoned for her, haunted not by spirits but by memory. She told the children they were leaving. They did not argue. They felt the same. The house was not home anymore. It was a tomb, a monument to suffering, a place where bad things had happened and might happen again. They packed quickly. They took only what they needed, clothes and a few precious items. The rest they left behind. They did not care about possessions, about things. They wanted only to escape, to go somewhere new, somewhere without history, somewhere they might be able to breathe. The farm was sold for less than it was worth. The family who bought it did not know the full story. They knew something had happened, but they did not know the depth of it, the extent of it, the way it had consumed and destroyed. The mother and her remaining children scattered. They went different directions. They started different lives. They rarely spoke to each other. There was too much pain in being together, too many reminders, too much shared trauma. Each tried to build something new. Each tried to forget. Each tried to be normal. To have the life they might have had if none of this had happened, but they were marked, changed, forever different from who they might have been. Let your mind drift away from the story now. You have heard enough. You have learned what there is to learn. Now you can let it all fade. Let it become dream. Let it dissolve into the formless space of deep sleep. The son who had tried to be strong became a quiet man. He married late. He had children but kept them close. Too close. He was overprotective, anxious, always waiting for something bad to happen. His wife did not understand. His children felt smothered. He could not help himself. The daughter who had been youngest became a teacher. She was kind to her students, patient and gentle, but she never married, never had children of her own. She lived alone in a small house. She read books and tended a garden. She was content in her way, but also lonely, also separate from life in some fundamental way. The middle child disappeared into the West, into territories that were just becoming states, into places where no one knew his name or his history. He reinvented himself. He told no one where he came from. He created a new past for himself, one without tragedy, one without ghosts. The mother lived longest. She moved from place to place, never settling, never finding home. She worked when she could. She accepted charity when she could not. She grew old on the road, in boarding houses, in spare rooms of distant relatives who had not known her before. She rarely spoke of what had happened. When asked about her past, she gave vague answers. She changed the subject. She created fictions. She protected herself with silence and lies. The truth was too heavy, too painful, too much to share with people who had not lived it. She died in a city far from where she had been born, far from the farm, far from her husband and daughter who were buried there. She was buried in a pauper's grave, unmarked, anonymous, another old woman who died alone. Her remaining children did not know she had died until months later. By then it was too late to do anything, too late to give her a proper burial, too late to say goodbye, too late for any of the things children are supposed to do for parents. They felt guilty about this. They felt they had failed her, but they also felt relief. Relief that the last link to that terrible time was severed. Relief that the story was truly over. Relief that they could finally stop looking over their shoulders. Stop waiting for the voice to return. Stop living in fear. Your awareness is barely a flicker now, the smallest light in vast darkness, about to be extinguished completely. Let it go out. Let the darkness be complete. Let sleep be total and absolute. Decades later, a researcher tried to find descendants of the Bell family. She wanted to interview them, to get their perspective on the legend, to hear what had been passed down through the family line. She found very few. The family had scattered and fragmented. Many had changed their names. Many had hidden their connection to the story. Many had died without passing on the history. Those she did find were reluctant to speak. They had been told not to talk about it. They had been raised to keep family business private. They had been taught that the story brought nothing good, that it attracted wrong kinds of attention. One elderly woman agreed to speak, but only off the record, only without her name being used, only with the promise that nothing she said would be published. She was the great-granddaughter of one of the surviving children. She had heard stories from her grandmother, things that had never been written down, things that were too personal or too painful or too strange to share publicly. She said her grandmother had nightmares until the day she died, that she would wake screaming, that she would talk to empty rooms as if someone was there, that she was never quite right, never quite recovered. She said her grandmother warned her about certain things, about being too curious, about inviting things in with attention and belief, about how some doors, once opened, can never fully close. She said her grandmother believed the voice had been real, that it had been evil, that it had taken something from the family that could never be restored, that they had been cursed in a way that lasted beyond one generation, that damaged had been passed down. The researcher asked if she believed this, if she thought the curse continued, if she felt affected by what had happened to ancestors she had never met. The woman was quiet for a long time. Then she said she did not know. She said she had her own experiences she could not explain, her own moments of strangeness, her own encounters with things that should not be. But she could not say if they were connected, could not say if cause and effect stretched across generations, could not say anything with certainty. She said maybe some things run in families. Maybe some sensitivities are inherited. Maybe some people are more open to experiences others never have. Or maybe it was all imagination, all suggestion, all the power of belief creating experience. She said the not knowing was the hardest part. The uncertainty, the lack of clear answers. She wished she could know definitively what had happened to her ancestors, what had truly caused their suffering, whether it was supernatural or natural, whether it was real or imagined. But she also said maybe the not knowing was important. Maybe mystery served a purpose. Maybe some questions were better left unanswered. Maybe certainty was not always possible or even desirable. She said she had made peace with not knowing. She had learned to live with uncertainty, to accept that some parts of her family history would always be unclear, that some questions would never be answered, and she said she hoped others could do the same, could accept mystery, could live with unanswered questions, could make peace with the limits of knowledge and understanding. Your breathing is barely detectable now. The smallest movement, the gentlest rhythm. You are on the very edge of consciousness, about to slip completely into sleep. Let yourself slip. Let yourself fall. Let yourself disappear into rest. The researcher thanked the woman and left. She thought about what she had learned, about how trauma echoes through families, how stories change as they are passed down, how belief and experience intertwine in ways that cannot be separated. She thought about her own purpose, her own desire to understand, to explain, to solve the mystery. She wondered if she was helping or hurting. If bringing attention to the story honored those who suffered or exploited them, if investigation was respectful or invasive. She decided to step back, to stop actively researching, to let the story be. She had learned what she could learn. She had talked to who would talk to her. She had formed her own conclusions. That was enough. She wrote her findings, but she did not publish them. She kept them private, personal. She had promised the woman anonymity. She would honor that promise. She would protect what little privacy remained for the family. The notes sat in a drawer for years. She looked at them sometimes, remembered the interviews, the sites she had visited, the hours spent in libraries and archives, the puzzle she had tried to solve, but she never regretted setting it aside, never regretted choosing discretion over disclosure. She had learned that some stories belong to those who lived them, that not everything needs to be shared, that mystery can be sacred. She grew old thinking about this case, about what it had taught her, about the limits of research and knowledge, about the ethics of studying tragedy, about respect and boundaries, and the responsibility of those who tell stories. In her final years, she burned her notes. She destroyed her research. She eliminated the unpublished work. She wanted to make sure it could never be used without the consent she had promised to maintain. Some might say this was a waste. That knowledge was lost. That history was obscured. But she felt it was right. Felt it was the only ethical choice. Felt that protecting people mattered more than satisfying curiosity. The story would continue without her notes. The legend did not need her research. It lived in other places, in other forms. Her small contribution or lack thereof would change nothing. And perhaps that was the point. The story was bigger than any one person's research, bigger than any individual's understanding. It existed in the collective consciousness now. It belonged to everyone and no one. Sleep now. The story has truly ended. There is nothing more to tell, nothing more to understand, nothing more to wonder about. Only sleep, only rest, only the blessed release of consciousness. The house that replaced the original stands still. It is over a century old now. It has been modified and updated. Additions have been built. Modern conveniences have been added, but the core structure remains. The current owners know the history. They know what land they live on. What legend is attached to their address. They give tours sometimes. They welcome the curious. They share what they know. They report no unusual experiences, no hauntings, no voices or moving objects or strange phenomena. To them, it is just a house, just land, just a place they happen to live. This disappoints some visitors. They want the haunting to continue. They want to experience something supernatural. They want the legend to be validated by ongoing strangeness. But the owners are glad. They do not want to live in a haunted house. They do not want to deal with the fear and exhaustion the original family endured. They are happy with normal, with boring, with quiet nights and peaceful days. They honor the history in their own way. They maintain a small memorial on the property, a stone marker with names and dates, a place where people can come to remember, to reflect, to pay respects. The marker is simple, dignified. It does not sensationalize or dramatize. It simply acknowledges that people lived here, that they suffered, that they are remembered. Visitors leave flowers sometimes, small tokens, notes. They say prayers or stand in silence. They photograph the marker. They touch the stone. They try to connect with something larger than themselves. The owners respect this. They keep the area clean and accessible. They do not charge admission or turn it into an attraction. They simply allow it to exist, to serve whatever purpose it serves for those who come. At night, when everyone is gone, the property is quiet. The trees rustle in the wind. The creek flows over stones. Animals move through the underbrush. The moon rises and sets. Stars wheel overhead. Time passes as it always has, and perhaps that is the real ending of the story. Not drama or revelation or supernatural proof, but simply time passing, life continuing, the world moving forward regardless of human stories and human pain and human need for answers. The Bell family is dust. The voice is silent. The legend remains, and life goes on. You are dust too, in a way. You are dissolving, fading, becoming less solid, less defined, less present. You are drifting into sleep like dust drifting through air, weightless, directionless, simply floating in darkness. Let yourself float. Let yourself drift. Let yourself disappear completely into sleep. There is nothing left to hold on to, nothing left to understand, nothing left to wonder about, only sleep, only rest, only peace. The story is over. The legend is told. The mystery remains unsolved and always will, and you can sleep now, deeply and completely, without fear or worry or thought. Sleep now. Sleep.